Ava Carter awoke to the sharp sting of cold air against her skin. Her muscles tensed before her mind fully registered the situation. The last thing she remembered was the violent shudder of her ship being torn from the sky, alarms shrieking in a chaotic symphony of impending doom. Now, there was silence. She blinked against the dim, violet-tinted sky, her pulse hammering against her ribs. Around her, the dense jungle pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence, the thick foliage glowing in shades of indigo and green. The air smelled sharp, metallic, almost electric. It was alien. Then the memories slammed into her like a fist. The attack. The crash. The capture. She pushed herself up, every nerve screaming in protest. Her hands grazed the damp, uneven ground, a mix of gnarled roots and something slick, something that smelled like blood. Bodies lay scattered nearby, some moving, others far too still. Ava swallowed against the rising dread. They weren't alone. A slow, deliberate clicking sound cut through the heavy air. It came from above. From the trees. She didn't need to look. She knew what she would see. The Zelvar. The hunters had come. Ava had heard whispers about them before. Ghost stories traded in the dead hours of long-haul spaceflights, murmured rumors that sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened soldiers. A warrior species obsessed with the thrill of the hunt. They didn't conquer planets. They didn't wage wars. They hunted, for sport, for ritual, for the sheer, unrelenting pleasure of it. And now, she was their prey. A shadow moved. The air itself seemed to shift as something massive dropped from the canopy, landing with an impact that sent vibrations skittering through Ava's bones. 8 feet of solid muscle and plated armor, wrapped in dark, segmented exoskeleton. The Zelvar's eyes, deep-set and burning with an inner red glow, locked onto her. Ava didn't breathe. The creature tilted its head, studying her with something like amusement. Then, in one fluid motion, it reached down and hauled up another survivor, a young man, barely more than a kid. He didn't even have time to scream. Clawed fingers clenched, and the sickening crack of bone echoed through the clearing. The Zelvar tossed the body aside like a broken toy. The hunt had begun. Ava moved. Instinct overrode logic. She bolted into the jungle, feet barely touching the ground as she weaved through the thick undergrowth. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to move, had to get as far away from that clearing as possible. Branches clawed at her skin, leaving thin, stinging welts. Behind her, the alien warriors didn't run. They stalked, their movements slow and deliberate, savoring the chase. They were playing with her. She gritted her teeth, forcing her mind to steady. Fear was useless. Panic would get her killed. She had to think. A fallen log loomed ahead, massive and hollowed out with decay. Without breaking stride, she dove inside, pressing herself into the damp, rotting wood. Her breaths came fast, sharp, but she forced them silent, hands clenched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. Footsteps. Heavy. Close. Ava held still as a shadow passed over the log's opening. A low, guttural sound followed, a chuckle. The Zelvar knew she was near. They could smell her. Then, a metallic voice, cold, dispassionate. Run. The word sent ice down her spine. A calculated taunt. They wanted her to know that escape was impossible. Something in Ava snapped. A memory surfaced, her first deployment as a soldier, the fear, the helplessness of being caught in an ambush. She had survived that. She had clawed her way out, refused to be just another casualty. She wasn't prey. She never had been. Slowly, deliberately, she reached down, fingers closing around a jagged piece of metal embedded in the damp earth. A remnant from the wreckage, sharp enough to tear through flesh. Her heartbeat steadied. The hunter lingered just outside the log, its armored foot shifting against the soil. It was toying with her, prolonging the inevitable. Ava exhaled, slow and controlled. Then she moved. She exploded from the log in a blur of motion, the makeshift blade slicing upward. The Zelvar reacted fast, but not fast enough. The metal shard found flesh, carving a deep line across the creature's thigh. A roar of pain followed. Ava didn't hesitate. She twisted, using every ounce of her strength to drive the blade higher, toward the throat. But a massive hand slammed into her, sending her flying. The impact stole the air from her lungs. She hit the ground hard, the world spinning. Before she could regain her footing, the Zelvar was on her, its claws digging into her shoulder, pinning her down. Its glowing eyes bored into hers. Ava spat blood, glaring up at the creature. She could see the surprise in its expression, the amusement replaced with something else. Curiosity. Humans weren't supposed to fight back. A second Zelvar approached, taller than the first, its armor gleaming under the alien sky. This one carried itself differently. More calculated. More dangerous. Commander Dravik. She had heard the name whispered among prisoners before they were released into the jungle. The leader of the hunt. He crouched beside her, sharp, taloned fingers reaching out, tilting her chin up. Examining her. "You are different," he mused. His voice was deeper than the others, carrying the weight of authority. Ava said nothing, her breathing ragged, her body screaming in protest. Dravik's mandibles twitched, his gaze assessing. Then he smiled, a slow, predatory expression. "Good." A sharp pain bloomed in Ava's neck. A syringe. Darkness swallowed her before she could resist. When Ava woke again, she was somewhere else. The jungle was gone, replaced by the cold, sterile interior of a holding chamber. The walls pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence, veins of glowing blue energy threading through the metal. Her wrists were unbound, but she knew better than to believe she was free. A low hum filled the air, mechanical and rhythmic. Beyond the reinforced glass of her cell, she could see them. Zelvar warriors, gathered like spectators at an arena. Watching. Waiting. Her gaze swept the room. There were others, other humans. Some conscious, some barely clinging to life. She recognized one of them, an older man with sharp eyes and a soldier's posture. He met her gaze, his expression grim. "We're not prisoners," he murmured. "We're contestants." Ava's stomach turned. This wasn't just a hunt. It was a spectacle. A test. And she had just been moved to the next level. The reinforced door slid open with a hiss. Two Zelvar guards stepped inside, their weapons humming with energy. Dravik followed. He studied Ava for a long moment, then inclined his head, as if acknowledging something unspoken. "The others," he said, gesturing toward the wounded, the broken. "They are weak." His gaze flicked back to her, burning with something close to approval. "But you are interesting." Ava's fists clenched. Every instinct screamed at her to lash out, to fight, to do something. But she forced herself to stay still, to listen. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about learning, about understanding her enemy. And then, when the time was right, this was about hunting them. The sting in Ava's neck still burned, a phantom ache lingering beneath her skin. She didn't know how long she had been unconscious, but when she woke again, the chamber had changed. The energy-veined walls pulsed in rhythmic intervals, casting eerie blue shadows across the floor. A scent like burnt ozone filled the air, metallic and sharp, reminding her of freshly charged weapon coils. The Zelvar technology was alive in a way she couldn't quite understand, humming with an unsettling presence. She was no longer among the prisoners. Her fingers curled against the cool metal beneath her. The sensation grounded her, anchoring her thoughts before panic could take hold. No restraints. No visible guards. That meant something. Not freedom. No, never that. But opportunity. Ava pushed herself upright, scanning the space with careful precision. The walls lacked seams, the exits seamlessly blending into the living metal. No obvious vents, no clear weaknesses. A cell, but not just a cell. A test. Movement in her peripheral vision drew her attention. Across the chamber, separated by only a translucent barrier, stood another figure, one of the other survivors. A man, older, military-bearing, etched into the way he stood despite the fresh wounds marring his skin. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, and yet his gaze remained sharp, assessing. He met her stare through the barrier, offering a slow nod. "You're awake," he murmured. His voice was hoarse, as if he had spent hours screaming or whispering in the dark. "Where are we?" Ava kept her voice low, steady. His lips pressed into a thin line before he answered. "The second stage." Ava didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. The Zelvar didn't just hunt. They curated their game, separating the weak from the strong, refining their sport into something more than just slaughter. And she had made an impression. The air shifted, the temperature dropping as the barrier between them flickered, then disappeared. Ava rose to her feet in a single fluid motion, muscles coiled, ready. Across from her, the man did the same, despite his injuries. The chamber brightened, the ceiling peeling back like retracting scales. Overhead, the night sky stretched impossibly vast, 2 moons hanging like twin sentinels in the darkness. The bioluminescent jungle loomed beyond, but they weren't in the wilderness anymore. They were in an arena. Rows of Zelvar gathered along the perimeter, their exoskeletal armor gleaming under the alien moons. They watched in silence, red glowing eyes unblinking. Predators studying their prey. And at the center, standing with the presence of a warlord surveying his empire, was Dravik. The Zelvar commander's mandibles twitched in something resembling amusement as he observed her. Beside him stood another hunter, his armor adorned with jagged sigils Ava didn't recognize. Not just a warrior. A tactician. A scholar of the hunt. A cold certainty settled into her bones. This wasn't just a fight. It was a lesson. A metallic chime rang through the air. The man beside her exhaled sharply. "They want us to kill each other," he muttered. Ava didn't move. She could feel the weight of the Zelvar's expectation pressing down on them. This was part of their ritual, their selection process. A culling. She looked at the man again. His expression was grim, but resigned. "You won't win if you hold back," he said. She knew that. She had always known that. The second chime rang. Ava shifted, her stance adjusting, but she didn't attack. Neither did he. The Zelvar stirred, their murmurs like the rustling of 1,000 insect wings. Dravik's mandibles twitched, but he didn't interfere. He was waiting. Ava saw the decision settle in the man's eyes an instant before he moved. He lunged, fast despite his injuries, and she met him head-on. Their bodies collided, the impact sending a jolt through her already aching limbs. He wasn't weak. He fought with the brutal efficiency of someone who had killed before, someone who had made peace with the ugliness of survival. Ava deflected his strike, twisting her body to absorb the momentum. She could kill him. She knew a dozen ways to do it. Press her fingers into his throat, drive her knee into his weakened side, crush his windpipe before he could react. But she didn't. Instead, she turned his own force against him, sending him sprawling to the ground. He hit the floor hard, coughing, but he didn't rise. Ava stepped back. Silence. The Zelvar shifted, red eyes narrowing. Dravik took a single step forward, his presence like a storm gathering at the edges of the arena. "You refuse," he said, the words more observation than question. Ava met his gaze. "You wanted to see strength." She gestured to the man on the ground, still breathing, still alive. "That is strength." Dravik was quiet for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. The sound was deep, reverberating, tinged with something almost like approval. He turned to the other Zelvar, addressing them in their own language. The response was immediate. Some hissed in displeasure, others nodded in what could have been agreement. Dravik refocused on her. "Very well," he said. "Then let us see what you do against a true opponent." The arena shifted. The floor beneath her feet trembled, sections of it folding away to reveal something massive rising from the depths below. A cage, its bars humming with energy. Inside it, something moved. A creature unlike anything Ava had ever seen. It stood on 4 powerful legs, its scaled hide pulsing with a faint bioluminescence. Its elongated skull housed a mouthful of jagged, serrated teeth, and its eyes, dark and bottomless, locked onto her with immediate primal focus. A predator. The cage hissed open. Ava barely had time to move before the creature lunged. She twisted out of its path, but not fast enough to avoid the swipe of a razor-sharp claw. Pain erupted along her side, hot and sharp, but she ignored it. Pain was secondary. Pain was irrelevant. The beast circled, its muscles coiling beneath its hide. It was testing her, measuring her. Ava bared her teeth. Then she moved. She darted forward, using her smaller size to her advantage, slipping beneath its strike and driving her fist into the vulnerable flesh beneath its jaw. The impact sent a shudder through its body, but it wasn't enough. It reared back, tail lashing out, catching her across the ribs and sending her sprawling. The crowd roared. Ava rolled to her feet, breathing hard. Her mind raced, cataloging everything. The way it moved. The way it hesitated before striking. The way it protected its throat. Weakness. She feigned a stumble, letting exhaustion creep into her posture. The beast saw its opportunity. It lunged. Ava waited until the last possible second. Then she moved. She sidestepped, twisting her body as the creature sailed past her. In the same instant, she drove her knee into its vulnerable throat. The effect was immediate. The beast collapsed, choking, its massive body convulsing. Ava didn't hesitate. She grabbed the nearest shard of broken armor from the ground and plunged it into the soft tissue beneath its jaw. The struggle lasted only seconds. Then it was over. Silence fell over the arena. Ava straightened, blood dripping from her hands, her chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. Dravik watched her, unreadable. Then he smiled. "You learn quickly," he said. Ava didn't answer. She simply stared at him, breathing through the adrenaline. Because she understood something now. This wasn't about survival. This was about becoming something more. She met Dravik's gaze and, for the first time, she saw what he saw. Potential. And for the first time, she felt it, too. The first flicker of something dark, something primal, something that whispered, "You are not prey. Not anymore." The blood had long since dried on Ava's skin, leaving a stiff, rust-colored film along the ridges of her knuckles. She barely felt it anymore. Pain had become a distant thing, like an old wound worn smooth by time. The dull throb in her ribs, the lingering ache in her limbs, these were nothing more than echoes of battles already fought. What mattered was the present. The next fight. The next step toward something she couldn't yet name but could feel taking shape within her. She stood in the dim glow of the training chamber, surrounded by the silent hum of alien machinery. The space pulsed with a strange energy, the walls shifting in subtle, almost imperceptible ways, as if the room itself was alive. Across from her, a Zelvar warrior loomed, its plated exoskeleton gleaming beneath the cold, artificial light. This one was different from the others she had faced. Smarter. More patient. Dravik watched from the edge of the chamber, his arms folded across his broad chest. He had not intervened since the arena. He didn't need to. Every trial, every brutal lesson, was a step in the transformation he had already set in motion. He was waiting, studying, measuring how far she would go. The warrior before her shifted its weight, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Ava adjusted her stance in response, her muscles loose, her breathing steady. They had taken her apart piece by piece, stripping away the edges of the person she had been. But instead of breaking, she had sharpened, forged herself into something new. The warrior lunged. Ava moved before thought could register, her body reacting on instinct honed through blood and survival. She ducked low, twisting past the creature's outstretched claws, her palm striking hard against the exposed joint beneath its arm. The impact sent a shudder through its frame, but it recovered fast. Faster than the others. It struck again, feinting high before sweeping low, its leg arcing toward her ribs. This time, Ava met the attack head-on. Instead of dodging, she absorbed the blow, twisting with the momentum to lessen the impact. Pain flared through her side, but she didn't falter. She let it fuel her. She struck back. Her fist connected with the warrior's throat, and for the first time, she saw it, a flicker of surprise in its glowing red eyes. It had expected her to evade. to retreat. But Prey ran. Ava didn't. Not anymore. The Zelvar staggered, and she didn't give it time to recover. She closed the distance, driving her knee into its abdomen, then pivoting sharply, sending it crashing to the ground. The chamber vibrated with the impact. Ava stepped back, her breaths measured, her pulse steady. The warrior didn't rise. It lay there, motionless, chest heaving. Dravik's slow, deliberate clapping echoed through the chamber. "You are learning," he said, stepping forward. "Good." Ava turned to face him, expression unreadable. She knew better than to trust his approval. The Zelvar didn't praise without purpose. Dravik studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "There is a hunt tomorrow." His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, something unspoken woven beneath the words. Ava remained silent. "You will not be prey," he continued. "Not this time." Something cold slithered through her stomach, but she kept her expression steady. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The true test. She wasn't being hunted anymore. She was being made into the hunter. The jungle stretched before her, vast and pulsing with alien life. Mist coiled through the dense foliage, curling around thick, twisting roots that jutted from the earth like skeletal remains. Strange sounds echoed in the distance. Low growls, the rustling of unseen creatures moving through the underbrush. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something sharper beneath it, something metallic. Ava gripped the weapon in her hands, a sleek, curved blade crafted from the same dark metal as Zelvar armor. It was lighter than it looked, perfectly balanced, an extension of her own body rather than a foreign tool. Dravik stood beside her at the edge of the hunt's designated ground, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He did not look at her when he spoke. "Kill or be killed. That is the only rule." Ava didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The hunt began with a single chime. She moved into the jungle without hesitation, her steps silent, her breathing controlled. This was no longer about survival. It was about proving something, perhaps to the Zelvar, but more than that, to herself. The first kill came swiftly. A figure moved through the foliage ahead, one of the other captives, a man who had once been as lost and desperate as she had been. But Ava was not desperate anymore. She was precise, cold. He never saw her coming. She struck with practiced efficiency, her blade slicing clean through his throat before he could react. He crumpled, blood soaking into the alien soil. Ava exhaled slowly, steadying herself. There was no hesitation, no doubt. She moved on. More figures emerged, scattered through the jungle. Some ran. Some fought. It didn't matter. Ava met each encounter with calculated precision, her movements honed by instinct and ruthless purpose. She wasn't human anymore. Not in the way she had been before. The jungle became a graveyard, bodies littering the ground like broken pieces of a forgotten game. The air was thick with the scent of death. And still, she moved forward. By the time Ava returned to the clearing, she was the only one left. The bodies had long since cooled, the blood drying to a dark stain on her skin. The Zelvar stood in silent observation, their red eyes gleaming in the low light. Dravik stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over her like a blade. She had passed the test. She had become what they wanted her to be. But as she stood there, surrounded by the silent approval of the hunters, something unfamiliar twisted in her chest. Not regret. Not guilt. Something darker. Something that whispered of what she had lost. Dravik tilted his head slightly, studying her. "And now?" he asked. Ava didn't answer. Because she didn't know. She had become the predator. But what hunted a predator? Ava stood at the precipice of the Zelvar warship, her reflection glinting in the dark alloy of the towering structure. The moons hung high above, their pale light cutting through the thick atmosphere, casting jagged shadows across the landing bay. The jungle scent still clung to her, earth, blood, and the sharp tang of something primal. She had left behind the last remnants of who she had been, and in its place, something far more dangerous had taken root. Dravik watched her from the platform's edge, his posture as still and unreadable as ever. He had been testing her from the moment she was captured, molding her, tempering her instincts. And now, at last, she had become the thing he had sought to create. But he had miscalculated. She wasn't his weapon. She was his reckoning. The Zelvar warriors stood in rigid formation, their blackened exoskeletal armor gleaming beneath the artificial glow of the ship's interior. They had accepted her now, not as prey, but as one of their own. Ava could feel their expectation, their quiet acknowledgment of her place among them. And yet, they had no idea what they had truly invited into their ranks. Dravik took a step forward, his mandibles twitching slightly as he regarded her. "The hunt is complete," he said, his voice a measured weight in the air. "You have proven yourself." Ava met his gaze, her expression unreadable. She had learned their ways, their patterns, their weaknesses. She had studied the shape of their movements, the subtle shifts in their posture that betrayed intention. She had been prey once. She had learned what it meant to be hunted. But now, she understood something they did not. The predator that forgets the taste of fear is the easiest to kill. Dravik tilted his head, waiting. Perhaps he sensed the shift in her, the quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. Or perhaps he still believed he was in control. Ava's grip tightened around the blade at her side. She moved. Faster than they expected. Faster than they thought possible. Dravik's eyes widened by a fraction before she struck, her blade carving a brutal arc toward his throat. But he was not weak. His arm shot up, deflecting her strike with a flash of movement, his claws lashing out in return. She ducked, twisting beneath the counterattack, feeling the whisper of air as his strike narrowly missed her. The warriors around them hesitated, their instincts clashing. Was this another test? Another trial? It was too late for them to decide. Ava shifted her weight, using the momentum of her dodge to drive her elbow into Dravik's midsection. The impact sent a shudder through his frame, and for the first time, she saw something like surprise flicker in his glowing red eyes. She was not just fighting him. She was hunting him. Dravik recovered quickly, his mandibles flaring in something between a snarl and a grin. He was enjoying this. He had wanted this. Good. Ava pressed forward, her strikes relentless, each movement honed by the lessons he had taught her. She used their own techniques against him, feinting high before shifting low, twisting out of reach just as his counterattacks came too late. He had underestimated her. The other warriors had begun to stir, their hesitation breaking as realization set in. She wasn't proving herself anymore. She was eliminating him. One of them lunged for her. Ava spun at the last second, using Dravik's own body as a shield. The warrior hesitated, giving her the fraction of a second she needed. She turned her blade in her grip and drove it upward, beneath Dravik's rib plating. The blade bit deep. For the first time, Dravik faltered. His mandibles twitched, a wet gurgle escaping as his body seized around the weapon. Ava held his gaze, watching as the understanding sank in. He had made her into this. And now, it was the last mistake he would ever make. She wrenched the blade free. Dravik collapsed to his knees. Silence spread across the platform. The other Zelvar stood frozen, their red eyes locked onto their fallen leader. The weight of what had just happened pressed down upon the space like a silent explosion. Ava turned, blood dripping from her hands, her breath steady. She had become more than a hunter. She was their nightmare now. One of the warriors took a step forward, cautious, uncertain. He was measuring her, deciding if she was now the one to follow or the one to kill. Ava met his gaze, unblinking. Then she moved. Not away. Not back. Forward. The first warrior fell before he could even raise his weapon. The others followed soon after. Ava moved like a phantom through their ranks, cutting them down with cold efficiency. They had trained her, they had armed her, and now they reaped what they had sown. The ship's alarms blared, the war drums of a doomed empire. More Zelvar flooded the platform, their movements sharp with purpose. But Ava was already in motion, weaving through them like a shadow, her blade an extension of the inevitability she had become. The warship loomed ahead, its interior dark, its corridors twisting like the veins of a beast waiting to be gutted. She disappeared into its depths, leaving behind only the echoes of a massacre. By the time the last body hit the ground, Ava had already claimed the bridge. She stood at the command console, her reflection flickering across the dark screens. The ship systems pulsed beneath her fingertips, waiting. The Zelvar had taken her, broken her, shaped her. Now, she would return the favor. Her fingers danced over the controls, rerouting power, locking down escape routes. She watched as the surviving warriors scrambled through the corridors, desperately trying to regroup. It wouldn't matter. The engines roared to life, but not for escape. For destruction. Ava turned her gaze to the vast emptiness beyond the viewport, the stars stretching in endless silence. Then she pressed the final command. The warship shuddered as the overload sequence initiated. And Ava, the last human standing, smiled.